I never thought my life would fall apart inside a courtroom. Not because of the divorce itself. That pain had already been eating me alive for months, but because of what my son brought into that room. A simple video on his phone. A video that no one expected. A video that made the entire courtroom go silent, and made my husband's lawyer drop his pen with a loud clatter. When the judge asked, "Is there anything else before we proceed?" My son, my quiet, shy, gentle boy, stood up and said 10 words that froze every heartbeat in that courtroom. "Your Honor, I have something you need to see." I didn't know he had recorded anything. I didn't even know he knew the truth. But what he played, what he revealed, what he exposed, changed everything. My husband, the man I had loved for 18 years, slammed his fist on the table and shouted, "Turn that off!" But it was too late. His voice echoed off the courtroom walls, mixing with the sounds coming from the phone speakers. Sounds that proved everything I had tried to hide, everything I had been blamed for, everything he had denied. And in that moment, with everyone watching, I asked myself, how did we get here? How did the man I loved turn into someone who could do this? And what happens to a marriage when the truth finally comes out? This is the story behind that video. The story of betrayal, secrets, courage. And the day my son saved me when I didn't even know I needed saving. Before everything collapsed, people always told us we looked like the perfect family. We had the house with the garden, the weekend breakfasts together, the birthdays full of laughter. We posted smiling photos on social media, and everyone commented, "Couple goals," or "You two are made for each other." But behind those pictures was a truth I kept hidden for years, a truth slowly poisoning my heart. My husband, Daniel, wasn't always cruel. When we first met, he was the kind of man who pulled out chairs, cooked dinner, surprised me with flowers. He had a softness in his eyes that made me feel safe. I believed he would protect me from the world. But people don't always stay who they are. Sometimes they change quietly, slowly, without you noticing until it's too late. After our son, Ethan, was born, everything shifted. Daniel became distant. Physically present, emotionally gone. He stopped talking to me unless it was about bills or errands. He stopped asking how I felt. Stopped spending time with our son. Stopped caring about the little things that used to hold us together. And then the anger started. Not the kind that leaves marks, but the kind that leaves scars you can't see. Sarcastic comments. Cold silence. Sleepless nights with him coming home late. Smelling of cologne that wasn't mine. I tried to explain to friends. He's just stressed. He's tired from work. He doesn't mean it. But deep down I knew something was wrong. One night, while clearing dishes, he said something that stayed with me. "You're lucky I'm still here. No one else would put up with you." I laughed it off, but the words burned. Our son noticed everything. Children always do. Ethan would sit in the living room, pretending to play with his toys, but his eyes followed every cold exchange, every slammed drawer, every moment his father ignored me. I kept telling myself things would get better, that marriages go through phases, that he still loved me somewhere underneath the surface. But then came the lies, the nights away, the messages I wasn't supposed to see, and the final blow, the day he told me he wanted a divorce. Not with sadness, not with regret, but with a smirk, as if he had already won a game I didn't even know we were playing. I remember standing in the kitchen, the sun shining through the window, turning everything golden, but nothing inside me felt warm. My hands trembled as I whispered, "Why now?" He shrugged, cold, unbothered. "Because I found someone who actually listens." Someone else. Of course there was someone else. What I didn't know then was that the divorce would be far uglier than the marriage itself. And my son, my gentle, quiet boy, would become the only person brave enough to face the truth. Divorce papers were just the beginning. What followed was something I never imagined, a custody battle that turned into a war. Daniel wasn't fighting because he loved our son. He was fighting because he wanted to hurt me. He hired an aggressive lawyer. He spread lies about me, that I was unstable, emotional, unreliable as a parent. He twisted memories, distorted facts, painted himself as a perfect father. And the worst part, he did it all with a calm, practiced voice that sounded believable to anyone who didn't know him. "I want full custody," he told the judge on the first day. "Not joint, not shared, full." I felt the air leave my lungs. His lawyer stood up and said I was overly emotional, unpredictable, and unable to provide a stable environment. My hands tightened into fists under the table. Unpredictable. I had been the one keeping our home together while he came and went as he pleased. But the legal system doesn't care about quiet suffering. Cares about proof. Evidence. And Daniel had crafted a story where I was the villain. Angry, unreasonable, unfit. Ethan watched all of this from the doorway at home. He wasn't supposed to hear, but of course he did. Children always listen when you don't want them to. One night, he sat beside me on the couch and whispered, "Mom, why is Dad saying those things about you?" I wrapped my arms around him and forced a smile. He's confused. Adults make mistakes too. But inside I was breaking. Every hearing was torture. Daniel sat confidently, legs crossed, smirking like he was already victorious. He whispered things to his lawyer and occasionally looked back at me with an expression that said, "I will take everything from you." He didn't care how it affected our son. He didn't care about truth. He cared about winning. As the hearings went on, the judge seemed unsure whom to believe. Daniel's polished lies were convincing. My exhaustion made me look fragile. Barely slept, barely ate. But every morning I told myself, "Stay strong for Ethan. He needs you." What I didn't know, what I couldn't have guessed, was that Ethan had already decided to take matters into his own hands. And he had something powerful that none of us knew about yet. The week before the final hearing, something strange happened. Ethan came home from school unusually quiet. He went straight to his room, closed the door, and didn't speak much during dinner. When I tucked him in, he hesitated before asking, "Mom, what does love look like?" Question shook me. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" He looked down, playing with the edge of his blanket. "Because the way Dad talks to you, it doesn't look like love." My heart cracked. I wanted to protect him, shield him from the truth, but he had seen too much already. Before I could respond, he whispered something even more shocking. "Mom, Dad didn't know I was in the hallway. I recorded something, and I think you should see it." My breath caught. "What did you record?" He swallowed hard. "That night he yelled at you. The night he said it was your fault he was leaving." My chest tightened. I remembered that night well. The shouting, the accusations, the cold cruelty in Daniel's voice. It had been one of the worst nights of our marriage. "He didn't know I was there," Ethan said. "And he didn't know his friend was recording from the car when he hugged that woman." My heart stopped. "What woman?" Ethan looked up, eyes glossy. "The one he goes to after he drops me at soccer practice." My hands began to shake. I had suspected infidelity for years, but to hear it from my own son's mouth was unbearable. He slowly took out his phone and showed me 2 videos. One was audio. Daniel shouting, insulting me, calling me names that tore through my chest like knives. The other was video. Him embracing another woman in the parking lot, kissing her, laughing with her. While I sat at home believing I was the problem, I pressed a hand to my mouth. Tears blurred my vision. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I whispered. Ethan looked down. "Because I didn't want to hurt you. But now, he's saying you're a bad mom. That's not fair." I pulled him into my arms and sobbed. Not because of the betrayal, I had already lived through that pain. But because of the kindness of this small, brave boy, who understood justice better than the adults around him. "Mom," he said softly, "I think the judge should know the truth." Froze. He was right. But the idea of using my son's recordings terrified me. I didn't want him dragged into this ugly fight. I didn't want him to feel responsible. "We'll think about it," I whispered. But deep inside I already knew. The truth had been hidden long enough. And it was time for it to come out, even if it meant a storm inside the courtroom. The morning of the final hearing, Ethan came downstairs dressed in his nicest shirt, the one he wore for school presentations. He looked determined, older somehow. "Mom," he said, "I'm going to tell the judge." I tried to stop him. "You don't have to. This is between adults. I can handle it." But he shook his head. "No, Dad's lying. I'm not letting him take me away because of something he did." Something in his voice, quiet but firm, made me realize he had already made up his mind. He wasn't doing this out of anger. He wasn't doing it to take sides. He was doing it because he had watched the truth stay buried for too long. When we arrived at the courthouse, Daniel was waiting with his lawyer, both confident and almost smug. His lawyer leaned toward the judge. "Your Honor, we will be presenting evidence today that the mother has a pattern of instability." But before he could continue, Ethan stood up. "Your Honor," he said, voice steady, "I have something important. Something you need to see." My heart raced. My hands shook. I whispered, "Ethan, you don't have to." But he gently squeezed my hand and stepped forward. The judge looked surprised. "Son, are you sure you want to speak?" "Yes," he said. "Because I'm the one they're fighting over. And I know what happened." Daniel stiffened. His eyes widened. He mouthed, "Sit down." But Ethan didn't. He walked to the front, placed his phone on the desk and said, "These videos, they're the truth. And they show why my mom isn't the problem." The courtroom went silent. Daniel stood up abruptly. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous." But the judge lifted a hand. "Sit down, Mr. Collins." For the first time in months, Daniel looked nervous. The tension in that room felt like electricity. No one moved. No one breathed. And then, Ethan pressed play. The audio began first. Daniel's voice filled the courtroom, loud, cruel, mocking. "You think anyone else would want you? You're nothing without me." I closed my eyes, humiliation washing over me. People shifted in their seats. The judge leaned forward. Then came the second recording, the video. Daniel standing in the parking lot, arms around another woman, kissing her, laughing, talking about freedom and being done with responsibilities. Every face in the courtroom froze. The judge's expression turned to stone. Daniel's lawyer slumped in his chair, rubbing his forehead. Daniel shot up from his seat. "That is taken out of context," he shouted. But the judge cut him off sharply. "Sit down." For once he obeyed. The video ended, leaving a heavy silence behind. Ethan finally spoke, voice trembling. "Dad told me Mom was unstable. He told the court she was a bad parent. But she's the one who stays with me. She's the one who helps me with homework. She's the one who listens. She's the one who loves me." My vision blurred. I wasn't sure if I was breathing. "I don't want to live with someone who lies," he said. "I want to live with my mom." The courtroom erupted, whispers, gasps, stunned looks. Daniel tried once more. "He manipulated that. She put him up to this." But the judge glared at him. "One more accusation," he warned, "and I will hold you in contempt." Daniel's mouth snapped shut. And for the first time in 18 years, I saw fear in his eyes. The judge looked at me. "Ethan." "Daniel." Then he spoke. "Based on the evidence presented today, custody will be awarded to the mother. The father will have supervised visitation until further notice." I felt my knees buckle, not because I won, but because the truth had finally spoken, through the voice of the one person Daniel underestimated. My son. When we walked out of the courtroom, Daniel didn't look like the confident man he once was. He looked small, shaken, exposed. His girlfriend, the woman from the video, wasn't there. His lawyer avoided eye contact. And for the first time, he had to face the consequences of his actions. Ethan held my hand tightly. "Are you okay, Mom?" He nodded. "Yes. Because of you." We drove home in silence, but it wasn't the painful kind. It was peaceful, like the storm had finally passed. That night, I tucked Ethan into bed. He looked up at me and whispered, "I didn't mean to hurt Dad. I just wanted him to stop hurting you." I kissed his forehead. "You didn't hurt anyone, sweetheart. You told the truth. And the truth is never wrong." He smiled, relieved. Within minutes, he was asleep. I stood in the doorway watching him, my brave, strong, beautiful boy, and I realized something. Revenge doesn't always come from anger. Sometimes it comes from honesty, from courage, from a child refusing to be silent. I wasn't free because Daniel lost. I was free because my son stood up for me when I couldn't stand up for myself. And that is a kind of justice no courtroom can fully understand. If there's one thing I learned from all this, it's that truth always finds a way out, even if it hides for years. I spent so long trying to keep the peace, trying to protect Ethan from the ugliness inside our home. I believed silence was the best way to shield him. But silence can be just as damaging as lies. My son showed me that honesty, even when painful, even when frightening, is the only thing strong enough to break the cycle of hurt. He taught me that children see more than we think. They understand more than we expect. And sometimes they become our protectors when we least expect it. Daniel lost his case not because I fought harder, but because Ethan stood up for his own future. The truth in that courtroom didn't just save me, saved him too. Today our home is peaceful. There's laughter again. There's safety. There's healing. And every time Ethan smiles, I remember. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet boy standing in a courtroom, holding a phone, and changing everything.